Well, greetings and welcome to Sunday preview for this coming Sunday, February 5th. We're over in the Sunday School House where we remind our children that they are children of God. Really good to be with you today as we look through chapters 18 and 19 of the story. We're going to be looking at Daniel and then Esther, and then the next week, the return to Jerusalem. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll have the Friday blog, and then Monday there's more to the story. And then we'll go into Lent, and we're going to be looking at embracing the full life of God as we rise from the ashes of Lent. Wednesday will be just great. Wonderful first-person portrayals of people at the foot of the cross. Starting on February 22nd with Ash Wednesday, we'll have noon and 7 o'clock services, so make sure to plan on that. Following that for the next 5 Wednesdays, there's a dinner at 6 o'clock, and then the first-person monologue portrayals at the foot of the cross. So today we're looking at chapters 18 and 19, which looks at the Babylonian captivity, the exile, the deportation of the Jews through the eyes of Daniel, and then the return to Jerusalem 70 years later. So the Babylonian captivity, the deportation of the Jews, the exile, they're all the same things. We've heard those words over the years, but sometimes I've thought, oh, are they different? No, they're all the same kind of things. These stories tell of, remember, the kingdom was divided after Solomon. Everything fell apart, the northern and southern kingdom. Southern kingdom survived, the kingdom of Judah and Benjamin, centered in Jerusalem. What happened is when wicked King Nebuchadnezzar conquered the armies of Jerusalem and Judah, then sent Jerusalem's elite, we'll talk about that on Sunday, Daniel and some very good young men were taken into captivity in Babylon. So we'll look in the adult forum at the book of Daniel in the Old Testament and how his trio of friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, survived the captivity when they were there. They were identified as 4 young men with great promise, and so they were taught Babylonian culture. They learned all of the stories, the histories, the language, and all of that, but they resisted worshiping the pagan Babylonian gods, pagan gods. The king had a dream one night, wicked King Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel was able to interpret it, kind of like Joseph interpreted dreams way back in Genesis 37 through 50. In a sense, the story of Joseph gets replayed in the story of Daniel. So Nebuchadnezzar notices that Daniel is able to interpret dreams, and he promotes him and to rule over Babylon, and made 3 of his friends as high-level officials. Nebuchadnezzar, even wicked King Nebuchadnezzar, even in some ways recognized Daniel as God, the God of Israel, but not really, but just kind of at least recognized that Daniel had this God that he worshiped. Nebuchadnezzar, on the other hand, made a great big gold statue of himself and commanded everyone to worship it. Remember how Daniel's 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to do it. They were thrown into a fiery furnace. We'll talk about that on Sunday. The king, Nebuchadnezzar, noticed a 4th figure walking in it. In there with the fiery flames. We think it's the Holy Spirit walking with them, protecting them at that time. And Nebuchadnezzar prayed. The king praised the Jewish God for delivering Daniel's 3 friends. Nebuchadnezzar, wicked King Nebuchadnezzar, was later succeeded by Belshazzar, who ignored Daniel, and Belshazzar dishonored God. he was the king of Babylon, and his armies were overthrown by the Persian army when the Persian army conquered Babylon. As time went on, the Persian king issued a decree that all of the people needed to bow down and worship him and pray to him. Daniel wouldn't do that, of course, and was thrown in the lion's den, which we'll hear about on Sunday. The Persian leaders in Babylon were more benevolent, maybe you might say, than their Babylonian and Assyrian predecessors. The Persians were more sympathetic to the religious preferences of the people that they ruled. Persia's King Cyrus, a good guy, issued a decree to repatriate all of the aliens to their homeland that were taken during the Babylonian captivity, the Assyrian captivity. And so the people of Israel, people of Judah, really started to return to Jerusalem in 539 BC. So Zerubbabel, we'll hear about him a little bit on Sunday, with the first wave of about 50,000 Jews returning to Jerusalem. They were intent on building, because rebuilding the temple was their first priority. We'll hear about that in 2 weeks. They rebuilt the altar, they prepared sacrifices in accord with the law of Moses. But the locals around in Jerusalem kind of taunted them and hindered their process. They intimidated the Jews who were working on rebuilding the temple, and so the construction halted. We'll hear about that in 2 weeks, because that's the return to Jerusalem, from Babylon over to Jerusalem. So the second temple was eventually, again, we'll hear about this in 2 weeks, completed under Haggai, and the new temple didn't quite have the old splendor of the old temple, but God promised to shower Jerusalem in the second temple. You probably heard about that too. The first temple that was destroyed when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem. Then they went into exile, Babylonian captivity. They returned and rebuilt the second temple and returned to their temple worship. So that's just kind of a history. Next week we'll hear about Esther. But in the next 3 weeks, we'll close up the Old Testament. We'll go to Lent, and then we will start into the New Testament the Sunday after Easter. Easter is April 9th, so the 16th. We'll get into the New Testament, and what we'll talk about on the 16th of April is the intertestamental time between the end of the Old Testament, 400 BC, and the time of Jesus. It's called the intertestamental time. It's called the silent years. It's a time when you need to understand how the Romans took over and all that kind of stuff that caused the Jews at that time to think that Jesus was coming as a military Messiah to overthrow the Jews. So that will be kind of a transitional kind of time. Anyway, just wanted to give you a little preview of what lies ahead in the next couple weeks. So enjoy your reading over the weekend, chapters 18 and 19. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday for Daniel, the adult forum, a little bit more on Daniel, and then on Monday there's more to the story. So you take care. I look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.